Hey everyone, Jonah here from Dropgun Samples with an interesting but important topic for you today. While I could show you an endless amount of technical production skills that'll level up your tracks, all of the tricks in the world amount to nothing if not implemented in an efficient way. That said, I want to take a step back today and share with you what I wish was taught to me many years ago, and that topic being workflow. Workflow is the difference between finishing 3 tracks per year and finishing 30 tracks per year. And while 27 extra songs a year sounds like a hell of a gap to close, I promise you that with implementing the proper workflow strategies, you could even be finishing a song per week. I know this is true because I did it myself. From all of my years of experience in this industry, I could say confidently that bad workflow habits could qualify as one of the biggest career killers for new producers. You could make the most beautiful music in the world, but if the process is long and stressful, it's a one-way ticket to a burnout. So for all of our Dropgun family here today, I want to go over 10 workflow tips that are going to help you finish music and upgrade your skills much faster. Be sure to subscribe for more production content. Now let's get into it. For tip number 1, let's talk about warm-ups. Good workflow habits actually start outside of your own music. They even start outside of your own computer. Because if you want to perform well in a taxing activity, whether physical or mental, you need to have a solid warm-up. Preparing your brain to work on important projects is great for fighting producer fatigue and boosting mental energy. You never want to be caught working while uninspired. And opening up a project directly after waking up, coming home from work, or completing other unrelated tasks doesn't give your brain a chance to catch that inspiration. Your warm-up will vary depending on your different life situation. Whether you produce in the morning or at night, before or after work, it could involve music as the primary or the secondary task. A great example would be to DJ. Whether you have CDJs, a controller, or just record box on your computer, I've always found that a quick session on the decks with music that inspires me is a great way to stimulate the brain before a studio session. Another great warm-up is to give yourself a production challenge. This is open to broad interpretation and could mean anything from producing a genre that you're not used to, designing a specific sound, making samples, learning a plugin, or even recreating one of your favorite songs. If you make trap, try house. If you make house, try drum and bass. Many times during production warm-ups, I've actually ended up taking a sound and pulling it directly into the song that I intended on working through that day. You never know what you're gonna find for your own projects. And for my favorite warm-up, if you like to stay active, running through a brief workout in the studio before you start working is a great way to get inspiration for your work. As many already know, it's been proven that exercising improves cognitive function. I keep a couple dumbbells and an exercise mat in my studio. During my workouts, I'll listen to music that inspires me or watch production videos. Despite physical activity, our brains are still a muscle, and it's important to warm up any muscle before you start straining it. While an athlete could injure their body, the mental implications of an uninspired studio session are also very dangerous. And while we're on the topic of mental health, that brings me to tip number 2. So for my second tip, I'd like to talk really quickly about your habits outside of the studio. Like any other aspect of your life, what you do on a daily basis has a direct effect on your production work. Recognizing what you did differently in the studio on your good production days versus your bad production days is a great way to passively optimize your time in the studio. Sometimes the habits are obvious. Now, I'm not here to judge anyone's life choices. In fact, what might poison one's brain could also be a jolt of inspiration for another. However, it's really important that you're paying attention to your daily habits and how they're affecting your music. Sleep schedule, eating schedule, diet, fitness, hobbies, and personal relationships are all things that have obvious effects on your creativity. Gene Simmons, legendary rock star from Kiss, has sustained an entire career all while being completely sober, while Jimi Hendrix, possibly the greatest guitarist of all time, well, you know his story. All I'm saying is to recognize your daily habits and capitalize on the ones that are bringing you the best studio sessions. And while talking about habits, that brings me on to tip number 3, which is your habits inside of the studio. Your habits inside the studio range from everything in the space around you to everything in your computer. Speaking to the space around you, think about the way that your studio is organized. Think about the clothes you wear when you're producing, the way you sit, the lighting. These are all habits that have a direct effect on your workflow. In my personal experience, I find that dressing every day in casual clothes, sitting at my desk, and treating it as a clean, shared workspace helps me keep fresh every day. However, others need to get comfortable, maybe work from the couch on their laptop to get inspired. Regardless, how you keep yourself and the space around you while you're working at your best are habits to keep note of. And even further, your habits within your computer are just as important. Are your files, samples, projects organized? Are your tracks titled, "How do you like to keep your plugin windows? How do you like the brightness on your screen?" In the modern age, there's basically an entire recording studio within our computer. It's important that we keep that studio organized as if it's a real life space. And before we move on to the next tip, I want to make one more comment on studio habits, and this one is very important even for me. You ready?
Put the phone away.
This thing is the single biggest killer to my inspiration, and I'm sure I'm not the only one. There are entire studies based on this that you could find, so we're gonna move on. Let's move into some actual production with tip number 4. My 4th tip to optimizing your workflow has to do with starting songs, and that is to use source material. Starting a song cold turkey is a great way to doubt yourself for no reason. Throughout history, musicians have used instruments in tandem with their voice to write songs. These are two unchanging sources of sound that are oftentimes directly attached to their music. However, in electronic music, without some source or instrument to start a song, we're left trying to pull sounds out of thin air. For a select few, this is a fine enough songwriting method, but for most, this could ruin inspiration very quickly. Source material in this manner could be anything really. It could be a live instrument in your studio, a sample of a vocal, instrument, or synth. It could be a song you want to remix. It could even be a reference song that you want to use to build a song in that style. Your source material doesn't have to be in your song by the end product, but using something to tether your ideas off of while you're starting the writing process will make sure that you're always producing well inspired. And another type of source material actually brings me to my 5th workflow tip. And for tip number 5, I want to talk about templates. Templates for all types of music software are all over the internet and a great way to learn how songs are actually built. I highly encourage any new producers to buy themselves a couple templates when they're starting. However, once you become a more seasoned producer, I believe it's extremely important that you create a template that's catered to your own production style. It's no secret that I'm a tech house artist myself, in which case I've created a template that takes care of my organizational needs and has hundreds of my favorite sounds ready in samplers before I even start the song. My favorite drums are spread across samplers that are constantly updated, and my tracks are colorized and grouped the way I mix them. Doing this based on your own style will make sure that you're ready to produce whenever you open your computer. I promise you guys that is one of the most important things I've learned over the years. With that said, you could even further optimize your templating by utilizing tip number 6. And for my 6th tip, I'm here to tell you that you should save everything, not just your projects. Save your channel strips, effect recs, track states. Save your synth and plugin presets, save your group settings, save MIDIs, and definitely save your favorite samples. Whenever you make something for a song and you like it, save it so that you could use it again. I cannot stress how much this not only affects your workflow in being that the sounds are ready to go, but also helps you develop your own signature style in your music. While you definitely should be showing variation from song to song, reusing the sounds that work the best for you is a great way to settle into a style and get a crowd familiar with the type of sounds that you use. You could then take those sounds and tweak them and transform them from song to song, knowing that they are yours. Having these ready and easily accessible in your template is also going to increase your workflow tenfold. Now, something to a similar effect brings me to tip number 7. My 7th tip for increasing workflow is to know your go-to plugins. Every successful producer has their most reliable plugins, where they know the ins and outs and they're able to use them effectively and quickly. This spreads across the full spectrum: EQs, compressors, saturators, reverbs, etc. While it's obviously important to have variety in your songs and always be updating your plugin library as technology advances, you should have a lineup of plugins that you're able to pull up on the fly and execute effectively while you're quickly arranging a song. You can always go back and fix things in your mix, but being able to navigate quickly in and out of these VSTs is going to really speed up your songwriting process. And while I've just mentioned arrangement, that actually brings me to my 8th tip. For tip number 8, you should be arranging your songs as quickly as possible. There are more reasons why this is important than I have time to mention. My standard rule is that once I have the basic composition of my track, the drums, the bass line, the main synth line, it's a perfect time for me to start thinking about the overall structure of the song. A less permanent way of doing this is to use markers in your project. Set points on the ruler where you think you might want to break, build, bridge, and drop. However, I think there's a more effective method in combination with this. Once I have these key elements of my song and the markers in place, I like to copy and paste the basic loops over to where I believe they should be later on in the song. A main reason why this is helpful is while you're working on the first drop or first break of your song, you might make changes to the section that are very hard to copy over to the next part of the song in reverse. It's great to have the core part of the beat beat in place for you so that you could just build off of it whenever you get to that part. It also allows you to start mapping out ideas that you have for later in the song rather than waiting until you get to that section and possibly forgetting them. Sometimes even thinking about the full arrangement early on gives me ideas for the section that I'm currently working on. And while you're copying and pasting that arrangement through, my 9th tip might be very helpful. For my 9th workflow tip, it is absolutely crucial that you learn the hotkeys or key commands for your digital audio workstation. The amount of time I wasted over the years hunting and pecking with my mouse has me furious. Technically, the way our key commands are programmed in our digital audio workstations, we should almost never have to move our hands. From a generation full of kids who had to memorize button combinations for video games, as a producer, these are arguably the most important combos that you could remember. There's really not much to this, but I will say that you should recognize the actions that you find yourself doing frequently in your projects. Everything from cutting a region to dragging it across the song. You'll learn that there's a button for literally every action, and learning them will multiply your efficiency. I find that with hotkeys at this point, my hands end up moving faster than my brain. However, it's not always just button clicks. It's a combination of all of these things that I talked about previously, which brings me to my final tip and the hardest one to learn. For my 10th tip, you absolutely have to know when to move on. This is something to be expressed at multiple different magnitudes, and it's going to affect you at every point of your career. On a small scale, sometimes you're getting hung up on a sound or a certain section of your song. You don't always have to see everything through to immediate completion. Oftentimes, shifting focus to a different section of the song helps give me inspiration or ideas for the section that's in question. On a larger scale, sometimes you just get hung up on a song. From my personal experience, I recently let the vocals of a song ruin an entire 2 days worth of studio sessions for me. It's one of my best productions ever, but I needed a new vocal. By the end of the second day, I honestly hadn't felt that low about my music career in a while. My 3rd day trying, I finally moved on to another song, had an amazing studio session, and my confidence was completely revitalized. It should have never gotten that far. If you're stuck on a song and not able to make progress for hours at a time, it's important to recognize when it's time to move on and work on a different track. Similar to the smaller scale example, working on a different song could open up a new perspective and give you new ideas for the song that you just had to leave behind. And on an even larger scale, you have to know when to walk away for a night or even take a little bit longer of a break. We are all only human. We're just not going to perform at our best every single day. And when you try to force music out of the faucet when the well has not been pumped, it's going to be more hurtful for your mind than helpful. But always come back with confidence that you're going to break through that wall, because I know you will. And with that said, that's all I have for today's video. I know this one was a little bit different than what we normally do, but I don't see a lot of content out there for producers about mindset and workflow. So I really hope you guys liked it. Leave a thumbs up and let us know in the comments if you want to see more content like this in the future. Follow us on our socials at Dropgun Samples for plenty more quick production tips. I really hope this helps you finish more tracks, stay healthy, keep good habits, and I can't wait to see you guys again soon.